What is up, everyone? Welcome to a new video. This whole month on the channel we'll be talking about some of my favorite games from 2015. That starts with, of course, Mad Max. If you see my recent Rocket League video, you probably got the impression I must be a pretty big Mad Max fan. I am. I love the movies, you know, before Fury Road, and then after I saw Fury Road, you know, that just further accentuated how much I love, you know, the Mad Max universe and its characters and just the exasperation of it all. Given this information, it might surprise you that I really wasn't looking forward to the game before it was released. When it was announced, I was kind of interested. I was going, oh, okay, they're probably, you know, making a game to coincide with the release of Mad Max Fury Road. And though it came out months afterward with the Blu-ray release of Mad Max Fury Road, it was pretty much the same purpose. This game was made to, you know, profit off of Fury Road, promote the sale of Fury Road, and, you know, make more money off of that film because it was such a big hit. And, you know, it's probably one of the best films of 2015. Completely different discussion. This is game review, not a film review, but still, you get the gist. So I really wasn't looking forward to it until I got it for a really great deal on, you know, the PC, of course, because that's how I play all my games, on the PC. And I figured, okay, why not, you know, why not just play this? I am really glad I did, and I kind of regret, you know, not looking forward to this game beforehand, because, to be fair, you know, everything in this game just combined, even with its flaws and all of its good stuff, this is probably unofficial sleeper hit of 2015. So, you know, this video today we're going to talk about the game, and why you might be interested in picking it up, you know, whether that be in the Steam sale or buying it for someone for Christmas or just playing it during the holidays. You might really like Mad Max, so let's just provide some thoughts on it, as the video title says. So first, I must talk about the graphics. With the exception of Star Wars Battlefront, Mad Max is probably my pick for best graphics in a game of 2015. This game is beautiful. It's absolutely freaking gorgeous, and better yet, I have it on the PC, and it's super well optimized. Dare I say, probably one of the best AAA ports this year, which is a huge surprise considering this game was published by, you know, WB, which they had the abysmal release of Arkham Knight. The game looks phenomenal. You know, pump it up to max. This game just, you know, looks amazing. I cannot praise the graphics enough. And whether that be, you know, the environments, the skyboxes, the characters, the details, the animations, which are spectacular as well and should be praised, or the weather events. Every once in a while while you're playing this game, you'll get this crazy sandstorm that, you know, is meant to emulate the sandstorm scene from Mad Max Fury Road, and it is absolutely insane. I cannot describe it anything less than insane. It's just amazing when it goes down. All of this, you know, works in multiple ways for the game. For one, it makes the game more immersive, which is always important when you're making open world games. And the other thing it does is that it preserves the visual style of Mad Max Fury Road. Fury Road is a very, 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 very visual film. You know, the cinematography in that movie is phenomenal. If there's something about the visuals in Fury Road that was very, very pleasing to you, then you'll be pleased to know that Mad Max kind of preserves that same sense of visuals. So you're definitely going to enjoy it. Now, if you're familiar with the Mad Max story, the story here probably won't be all that surprising. Mad Max does some things, meets some people, has a pretty simple objective, and in the end, at the end of the day, probably wins and continues his wastelanding ways, hence a Mad Max story. And that's really what it is here as well, but the problem, though, I think, is that the video game narrative doesn't allow the Mad Max story here to be told very well. I mean, here's the thing, like I said, the plots have never been all that complicated in the movies themselves. I mean, if you look at Fury Road, Fury Road is one big road trip, one big continuous road trip that, you know, there's some fighting, there's some battles, there's a little bit of drama near the end, and then they come back and it's all good. In Mad Max, it roughly goes like this. You're building a car with a mechanic named Chumbucket. Chumbucket is probably the best thing about the story. This guy's great. You know, you'll be driving through the wasteland and all of a sudden he'll say something. He'll be like, I hope you come back, stranger. I forget what he calls you, but I hope you come back, And don't leave Chummy here with the, the magnum opus alone. The magnum opus is the car you're building, of course. But he has all these memorable quotes and all these, these little quirky remarks that just really, make you love Chumbucket. At first, I thought I was going to be really annoyed with him, but over time, I really fell in love with him, and he's my favorite thing about the story. The story is just you building a car, and you meet people, see things, do things to build that car that really aren't that impressionable. Which is kind of sad, because I was hoping at least part of the fun in the story of this game would be, of course, the journey. Seeing all those people, meeting these things that you would come to, you would come to expect from a Mad Max story to be crazy and just off the wall and, out there and just mad. It's in here, it's in this game, but it's not impressionable. And I really can't say why that is. I think it's just because it tries too hard to be over the top or crazy, and it just comes off as kind of pretentious. Which, you wouldn't expect that to be a pretentious thing. They're trying to be crazy and insane, and it's not working so well. Like I said, I just think it's a little too predictable, and it just comes at the wrong times, and it really doesn't leave a lasting impression on you, which is sad, because at the end of the day, the story for Mad Max ends up being kind of forgettable. It's sad it couldn't have been more, because it is Mad Max, and you do have the opportunity to tell a really crazy and just off-the-wall tale, but it falls far from greatness. The saving graces in Mad Max is entirely in its gameplay, as I said earlier. Like I said, there's some faults in the gameplay, but it's not enough to really bring the game down too much. One of the things that is brought down, though, is the combat. What can I say? Looking at the combat, the first thought you have is Batman. I hate to say that, more and more action-adventure games are just adopting the Batman formula, the free-flow combat formula, but they only do it because it's so freaking perfect. I can't think of a more perfect combat system that I've seen in a game that has been, challenging, required the player to be timely and effective, and has just been visually satisfying. It's just so much stuff about the Batman combat system is amazing. And it's definitely in this game, but of course there's some key issues with it that really prevent it from being a good, I guess, replicant of the Batman combat. One of those is the camera. If you ever played an Arkham game, you notice the camera changes depending on what you're doing. It's always meant to give you environmental awareness, especially when you're crowded by a bunch of enemies. And I think the bigger the mob of enemies you're taking up, the camera will actually widen and kind of zoom out, and you can kind of get a bigger environmental range of enemies to work with. In Mad Max, there is no such range. It zooms out. It's about the same magnification every time. It zooms out every time, no matter how big the mob is. And you punch enemies. And the camera doesn't move unless you move it, which isn't exactly inconvenient, but becomes inconvenient when enemies all of a sudden come off screen and try to punch you, and you only have like a split second to counter, the punch they're about to deal on you. And it's just really inconvenient because that camera doesn't give you environmental awareness that you should have, and so the combat really is kind of weak. I will say, in terms of visuals, they definitely nailed that. It's dirty fighting, and I really like the element of dirty fighting that, they have here. There's short attacks, and of course there's heavy attacks. Ones you tap the, attack button once, and then ones you hold it down. Then there's stuff where you can use shivs in your shotgun, which is only there, once again, for visual splendor. It doesn't really change much at all. You just simply, it's a one-button press for either of those, and bam, guy gets a shiv stabbed through the side of his head, or bam, a guy gets gutted with a shotgun and stuff like that. It's really cool to watch, but it's just not very, stimulating or fun to play, unfortunately. So where all the fun, or most of the fun I should say, where all the praise in Mad Max deserves to go to, is in the vehicle stuff. Everything revolving around the vehicle in Mad Max is damn awesome. It's amazing. Of course, as I said earlier, you're building a car, the Magnum Opus, and in building a car, you actually get to upgrade that car. At a glance, Mad Max probably looks to most people like Far Cry meets, Batman, in the sense that you have those combat and movement aesthetics from Batman, and the open world aesthetics from Far Cry. But to be very fair, this game is actually more like Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, in that half the game is spent on land, where the other half is spent on your boat. However, instead of Mad Max, instead of a boat, you have a car, of course. And just like in Black Flag, where you can upgrade the boat, in Mad Max, you can upgrade your car. And this is just a really well done system, not just because there's so many upgrades and so many options, but not all the upgrades progress linearly. So, in other words, in Black Flag, where I would keep dumping materials into a certain category until I had max armor, or keep dumping materials into a certain category until I had max cannons, in Mad Max, you kind of have to be very picky and choosy, because If I dump, a higher amount of materials each time to get that upgrade that's at the very end of the line, here's what's going to happen. Say I'm upgrading armor, alright? Now I got max defense with the best armor, but my car is also weighed down tremendously by having such badass armor because it's so big and clunky that there's no way the car will be able to drive fast with it. So my weight is kind of weighed down, which is one of my primary stats is weight. And because of that, the acceleration is slower, my car is not as fast, and I lose a lot of speed, which is important when you're in car chases and stuff. Sure, I have max armor, my car is very tanky, and it's very unlikely that I'll go down unless I, get a lot of, fire damage during a car chase, but it's probably not worth it considering that my vehicle will be really slow. For some people that might be worth it, others it won't. For me it wasn't, and so I stuck somewhere in the middle of the upgrades with middle armor and just middle acceleration. So there's a lot of upgrades like that in, the Magnum Opus. There's a lot of sacrificial upgrading where you have to pick one category over the other, which is pretty cool. And I like the system a lot because it actually kind of encourages you to think critically and kind of build your car. This isn't just, in Black Flag where everyone is eventually going to build the maximum upgraded Jackdaw. In Mad Max, everyone is essentially building their own car, which is assisted by having a very good customization system, I think. You have a lot of camos, you have a lot of car bodies, you can choose hood ornaments and bumpers and just various decorations for the car that personalize it. So not only do you have a car that is personalized visually, but the meat and potatoes of the car itself is actually optimized to your specifications. When it comes to the Magnum Opus, you have a variety of ways to take down cars. First off, you have ramming. You can ram by, I think it's the A button or something on a controller. No, it's the X button. You just tap X, move in the direction you want to go, and bam, pff, crash the car, ram into the car. Not crash the car. The car might crash after you ram into it, but you just ram cars right and left. And like I said, with the upgrades, you can put border spikes in the car, so you're dealing additional damage when you do ramming. Then you have the harpoon, which this is where, the character I mentioned earlier, Chumbucket, comes into play. He sits in the back of the Magnum Opus and he helps you take down cars. It's pretty awesome. He can use the harpoon, which is probably my favorite, favorite tool to use on the entire Magnum Opus. This thing is amazing. You can, harpoon bumpers, tires, armor, doors. You can harpoon drivers, which is so fun because I remember the first time I did it, I harpooned a driver, flew out of his car, and he just ragdolled all over the road, and it was amazing to watch. And it's so much fun. You can have a ton of sandbox fun with the harpoon alone, just ripping apart cars. And there's other ways to use it too. Say there's an explosive tank on the car, bam, shoot a harpoon at it, pull it out, boom, car explodes because I just pulled out their fuel tank. And then there's the Thunder Spoon, which is essentially a rocket launcher. You can fire just flaming balls of fury at other cars, and once it's maxed out, you can pretty much one-hit kill most vehicles. It's amazing. Given the fact that you have to upgrade your Thunder Spoon to that level, and it does take a while, but it's pretty awesome. And then you also, as a driver, you have your Max as a shotgun, so you can pull up close to a car, shoot at their fuel tank, bam! You got a fire explosion. You can also shoot at their doors, shoot at their tires. It doesn't always work, though. And, of course, you can't always get to their fuel tank. One thing I like about some of the cars in this game is that they'll have multiple layers of armor so that you won't be able to access or shoot at their fuel tank until you've gotten rid of all the layers of armor, either by ramming, shooting at it, harpooning parts of the armor off, stuff like that. And then you can shoot at the fuel tank. Or, sometimes what the vehicles will do is that they'll have flames shooting out of their fuel tank, kind of like that, that guitar guy in Fury Road with the flaming guitar. Flames will shoot out of the back of the car, and if you try to get close, you're going to burn to a crisp and explode. So, yeah, car combat, it's awesome. There's so many different vehicles as well, vehicle varieties that you can go after. Probably my favorite activity in the whole game are convoys, where it's basically a giant sequential car chase. It's so amazing. I have highlights from my stream where it's like a giant action movie. I'm shooting at cars, pulling down cars, trying to flag down the main vehicle, that has the hood ornament I'm trying to go after, and my car will break down. So I pull off to the side of the road, Chompa repairs it really quickly, some cars come by to kill me, so I pull up my shotgun, dodge out of the way really quickly, and then shoot the back of the car as they're driving away, and bam, car explodes. Car's all good to go, Chompa repaired it, jump back in the car, catch up to the convoy really quickly, take a shortcut, a really ridiculous shortcut that's going to probably damage my car even more, get back into the chase, and so on. It's amazing. The convoys in this game, so good. So, the car combat, really, I mean, to be honest, probably the best car combat I've played in a game ever. Arkham Knight attempted a very similar thing earlier this year, and I'll talk about that when I get to my video on Arkham Knight, but I'll just say this. Nowhere near as well done as the car combat in Mad Max. It's awesome. Now, something interesting about Mad Max, which I liked, but it's not the most effective thing, is that there's survival elements in this game. I guess that, you know, try to make the universe a little more immersive because it's Mad Max. It's a wasteland. It's a post-apocalyptic society. You kind of have to survive on your own. And so there are survival-like elements in this game. For example, you have a water canteen that you collect water for, and then you consume the water to get health. That's one way of getting health back. Another way of getting health back is finding maggots or dog food or killing small animals and then eating their remains to gain back health. And the two of these things aren't always that frequent, but it's not a big deal because when you die, there isn't a huge penalty. You get set back to wherever you were before, whether that be your stronghold or if you're in a mission, the last mission objective. So there really isn't a big penalty, and there really isn't a big motivation for getting those things. But it's still kind of cool to see those things in the game, and I like it. You know, I like the idea of having to survive and whatnot. And I'll be honest, it does add a little bit to the immersion, the idea that there are some survival elements in the world. The fact that I usually ignored those elements was partially because the gameplay allowed me to, but also partially because it ensured me the idea that, hey, I'm a pretty good wasteland survivor, I don't need these things. So, for the sake of immersion, it was actually partially effective. But when it comes to the open world, you get the ultimate mixed bag of it all, because here's the thing about the open world. Any one of the activities by itself is awesome. You know, you have a base takedown where it's kind of like Far Cry bases minus the stealth. So you kind of have to use your car to take down the base's defenses, and that's, you know, once you're in, it's basically, you know, find your way around, collect the loot, kill enemies, get to the objectives that you need in that base, and then move out. And it's kind of cool because it's a little bit scenic, and you kind of get to explore a little bit. But there's so many of these. I have no idea how many there are. I'm going to say over 40 in this entire game, and I can't fathom doing all of them. It's going to be a little repetitive after a while. Very repetitive at some point. And then there are, you know, car races, I want to say. They're kind of like death runs, I think, is the official name for them, where you have a set of objectives. One is Barrel Bash, I think, and you have, it's kind of like, it's kind of like Mario Kart racing, except replace some of the power-ups with explosive barrels. You have to hit the barrels at each checkpoint and then finish. It's fun for a time, and then it gets kind of repetitive. And then, of course, you have a ton, and I mean a ton of scavenging camps. There has to be hundreds and hundreds of scavenging camps in the entire game. Some of them vary in size. Some of them are very big. Some of them are very small. Only have maybe 2 lootable items. Others have much more lootable items in them. And by lootable items, I mean scrap. Scrap is the currency of this game. It's how you upgrade your car. It's how you upgrade Max, because he has his own set of upgrades. Currencies everywhere, and you get these from these scavenging areas, and they're all over the place. Some of them are pretty cool because it's very scenic and the open world is really well designed, but over time it gets kind of repetitive. What can I say? Mad Max is filled to the brim with content. This game is going to keep you very, very, very busy, which I like, because there's times where I really wanted to play this game and it did its job. It kept me very busy, and I was playing for hours on end. However, at no point when playing could I deny that this was very repetitive, because it does get kind of repetitive, which is unfortunate because, like I said, this is such a well-designed open world. Here's my shock with Mad Max. My primary shock with Mad Max in the whole game is that this game, of course, being Mad Max, is based in a wasteland. It's a desert. It's a desert of junk and debris and just, you know, the leftovers of civilization. And it's probably one of my favorite open worlds visually that I can remember in recent memory. Each region feels very, very distinct. There's one region that is basically, you know, the bottom of an ocean that's dried up. And as you're driving, you can definitely tell there's, like, you know, there's rolling hills, and there's wrecked ships, and there's, you know, there's areas with very white rock. And there's other distinct areas. Yeah, I think there's, I forget what it's called. I think it's the, I don't know what it is, but there's an area of the map, it's about halfway through, where you pass through this region that's basically a gateway into the shoreline. You know, for the first half of the game, you're exploring the bottom half of the open world, which is a washed up ocean with a lot of junk and debris in it everywhere. And then you pass the halfway through, you get into the shoreline, and you begin to see the remnants of civilization. So you actually see washed, deserty roads and truck stops and fast food places and diners and just a whole assortment of places. And then as you go further north, you get to Gastown? Yeah, Gastown, which is just mountains of garbage everywhere. It's pretty phenomenal to see. And then you get to the dunes, which, quite frankly, are dunes. It's like, it's like the Dune Sea in Star Wars, but with, a few surprises here and there. And it's actually interesting because underneath the dunes is the Underdome, which a lot of characters in the game are freaking out about, near the second half of the story. And as you go to the Underdome, you notice a lot of cool things. There's a submerged church that you can go into. There's a submerged airport that you can go into. It's just so well done. The open world, whoever does, the open world designers in Mad Max really deserve a pat on the back because they delivered once again one of the best elements of this game. The sad thing is though is that it was filled with pretty bare bones content. However, when you take into account the awesome vehicle combat, the combat which may get repetitive but is still okay, the great graphics which add to the immersion, and the wonderfully designed open world, this game is perfectly tailored for you to play for hours without end. As I said earlier in the video, that's kind of what, I felt this game would. It's the game that'll keep you playing for a very long time, and it did. It kept me playing. Anytime I played Mad Max, I was playing for at least an hour, and on average, I'd say I was playing Mad Max for 3 hours at a time. It was a game that was hard to put down. Just because of how much stuff there was and how well done all of it kind of blended together. That's not to say that any of the side content is really all that commendable, nor the story, nor the combat, but the vehicle is definitely commendable, and the open world is definitely commendable. And of course, the graphics are very commendable. So, it's really weird, Objectively, Mad Max shouldn't be all that great of a game, but I can't deny at the very end, when I played this game, that I had a ton of fun, and that I'm actually really itching to go back and play it some more. Whereas other games like, the Arkham games or the Shadow of Mordor, when I played last year, that I didn't really have a huge urge to play after I beat the story and I did all the content. And Mad Max, it's because of all that content and because of how well done the world is that even though I've probably seen everything, I'm still willing to do and play more of it. Just because of how immersive and how, well preserved the idea of just having hours and hours of fun is. Those are my thoughts on Mad Max. Yeah, I'd recommend picking this game up on sale if you can get it for a decent discount. I think whoever you give it to would really enjoy it. Like I said, open world players, whatever. If you played a lot of games on the consoles, that have come out so far, and there hasn't been a lot, and you're looking for another game to play that you could dump a lot of time into, Mad Max may just be the way to go. That or Just Cause 3, which is a very similar game in its structure, in that it's an open world. It's very fun to traverse, but it can get repetitive with some of its side content. And apparently the story has the same critique where it's kind of throwaway, but whatever. There's a lot of games to play. There's a lot of games to play at the end of the year. Mad Max was just one I'm glad I didn't miss out on. So, I want to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out my other videos upcoming and prior to. And if you played Mad Max, tell me what you thought about it in the comments below. Also, if there's another game you want me to talk about that came out in 2015, let me know. Chances are I might have played it. To give you a brief idea of what other games I want to talk about next, there's Batman Arkham Knight, there's The Witcher 3, there's Rocket League, and there's Pillars of Eternity, and there's probably some other games I'm forgetting, but we'll get to them when we do. So thank you all for watching, and I'll be seeing you all later.